Can you talk about your thinking on the prevailing wage issue and why you've settled on the number that you did?
Well, I and a number of members work closely with both the contractors and the trades to come up with what we believe is a fair compromise on prevailing wage. We want to recognize the importance of the trades to our economy in Ohio and the service they provide. We also want to recognize the strain on state and local budgets and make sure that we can complete projects at a reasonable cost. And so I'm happy to say that we worked amicably over the past month on some language that we're presenting in our omnibus amendment today.
What is the number? What is the threshold number?
The threshold would start at $125,000. It currently is at $78,000 and change, and I think it will bump up to about $80,000 if we did nothing. So it will then move to $125,000 the first year, $200,000 the second year, and $250,000 the third year.
Can you talk about Jobs Ohio and the decision on the governor being on the board?
Well, this was something that's been under discussion for some time, and as I recall, when the governor first proposed Jobs Ohio, one of his primary goal was to create jobs, and he felt it was important to show that commitment by leading the Jobs Ohio effort. I think over the following months since introducing the concept, he recognizes that we have some very talented people that can also lead that effort, and so he has decided to have someone else lead that effort so he can focus his full attention on running the state of Ohio.
So this came from him?
This came from his administration and actually from the governor. I mean, his recognition that he wants to focus on the state of Ohio activities, yes.
These two abortion amendments, can you speak to what they do and what they're supposed to accomplish?
It basically extends to local governments the same legal restrictions that we have at the state in terms of use of public funds for abortions. So it's simply, if you take what is in current law for the state, it extends that same level of protection to the unborn at the local level.
And it would affect like university hospitals and who else?
There are some exceptions to that that relate to, I think the wording has to do with use of equipment, and it's very detailed. I mean, I'd have to read the exact segment to you, but it talks about control of the equipment and a number of other specific references to current state law that would just extend to the local level.
Do you know how many abortions would be reduced as a result of this, given the fact that the home rule communities are excluded?
They're one of the ones excluded. I think one of the charter counties is excluded. So I do not know the number.
But isn't that where most of the abortions take place?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Do you know how many places would be affected?
I do not know the exact number of places that would be affected, no.
Can you tell me one place that would be affected?
Again, this is the policy that the Senate is trying to advance that is consistent with what we do at the state level.
And is this in lieu of any abortion issues that might be coming from the House?
No, there was no discussion of this being in lieu of. I think this is just on its own merits a separate issue.
Can you talk about the pay cut for legislators? Why is that in this and not in a separate bill? Or?
Well, we thought it was important to make a statement to the residents of Ohio and to the taxpayers of Ohio that are facing some very difficult times with the cuts that are going to be in this budget, that as legislators we're willing to step up and recognize the challenges. The governor has talked all along about shared sacrifice, and we think we are part of sharing in that sacrifice.
Didn't that provision stall over in this chamber last session? Why didn't you do it then, so it would have taken effect already, as opposed to doing it now where it won't take effect until next term?
I can't speak for why it stalled the last time. As I recall, there was some discussion of it, but I'm not sure if it stalled in the Senate or stalled in the House. I don't remember. What I do know is that it's something that we thought was important to let the residents and the taxpayers of the state of Ohio know that we're willing to share in the sacrifice that we're asking all Ohioans to take as part of this budget.
How much money does it actually save the state?
You know, the actual dollar amount is minuscule. I mean, it's not going to make much difference at all. It's more about the statement that we're making, that this is important, that we recognize this is a very difficult budget, and we feel that we should share in that sacrifice.
The think tank Innovation Ohio is contending today that it really was never, it's not an $8 billion hole, it's more like a $5 billion hole. And the implication being that there will be extra money developing here that groups on the left want to see spent on government programs. you have any response to them?
Well, the chairman may address this as well, but whether it's an $8 billion hole or a $7.7 billion hole or a $5 billion hole, it was a big hole. I am very appreciative of the fact that my colleagues stepped up and joined the governor and the House in proposing a budget that is not going to raise taxes for Ohio taxpayers. So you can quibble about whether it's $5 billion or $8 billion. To me, that's irrelevant. The fact is we did have a deficit. We did not raise taxes to close that deficit. I've been on record for quite some time saying that we do not need more spending in the state of Ohio. We need to control our spending. And so I'm sure there are many groups out there that would love us to spend more money. We do not have the money to spend. I think, Chairman, if I'm not mistaken, the revenue report that came out for May was the first revenue report in some months that actually showed a decline in our projected, our budgeted revenues. I think we're down $3 or $4 million. And I know we have gotten some conflicting information in recent months from economists who feel that, we still have some challenging times ahead of us. So this is not the time to be going, oh, we're out of the woods and let's start spending money. That's how we got in this place to begin with. And so let's make sure that we don't head back into the woods. Let's make sure we're on solid financial footing before we talk about spending money.
And I would just say about the $8 billion, as of August of 2010, everyone agreed, both Republicans and Democrats and every other think tank that was looking at the issue, that it was in fact $8 billion. I believe Innovation Ohio and many other organizations actually had it in their spreadsheets as to options of which they wanted the legislature to entertain as to covering. So I think it's been a pretty solid number, and I agree with the president. Whether it was 7.8 or 8.1, it was a huge battle, and we're thankful both the governor, the House, and the Senate colleagues appear to be willing to go along with no increase in taxes, keep the money in the pockets of the taxpayers of Ohio to fill that hole.
But to be fair, Chairman, aren't we seeing some revenue growth in 2012 and 13? And aren't the revenue numbers for this year up above projections in such a way that it's really more like 6 than 8?
Well, two different questions there. I think, in looking at the financial planning, fiscal year 11 ends in less than 30 days. And revenues have been up over estimates a couple months, 3 months this year. But the bottom line was, just like every small business and family can relate to, when you've got a drawer full of bills that you have to pay, that's exactly where the money's going to go. And we believe Director Keene when he says those bills will be paid at the end of fiscal 11. And then we'll have about $130 million at the end of this year, like we're supposed to have by law, going into the next 2 fiscal years. For the next 2 fiscal years, the revenues are projected, as the president just said. The economist said, we are not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. And even though revenues might be up over estimates, we need to all remember those estimates were just bare bottom, conservative estimates month by month as we saw the FY10 and 11 budget put together last time.
And again, I would reiterate, whether it's a $6 billion hole, a 7.7 or $8 billion hole, you look at numbers at a point in time. And as the chairman said, everyone agreed that, a little less than a year ago, we all agreed it was $8 billion. And then revenues improved a little bit and went up with 7.7. Whether it's 7.7 or $6 billion, we don't have the $6 billion. So we still have to cut in order to balance the budget. And that's what we were able to do, was balance the budget without raising taxes.
Is the reason you don't want to, is one of the reasons you don't want to spend money now, not just because you don't think extra money may develop, but because even if it does develop, you would rather not spend it on government programs, you would rather give it back in the form of still another tax hike? Is that part of your
tax
cut? Yeah.
No, definitely not a tax hike. But
is that part of your reasoning?
It is not part of mine. And I think, said publicly before, and I have shared with the governor that to me the priority is to keep spending under control, and then if there are excess revenues, let's start to replenish the rainy day fund. I think we owe that to the taxpayers of Ohio to make sure that we are good stewards of their money. So I am not looking for opportunities to spend more money. I have said before I got into leadership that I thought the state of Ohio had a spending problem, And I want to hold true to the commitment of trying to keep spending under control. And if we are in that fortunate situation where revenues improve, then I'd like to see money go into the rainy day fund so that we are prepared for the next downturn, because we know it's coming, we just don't know when.
And that's a critical element. I mean, the people of Ohio need to know, because they can understand this. They can relate it back to their own family or their small business. The state of Ohio has no dollars in its savings account. We are running a cash-only basis here, and we have been doing that for the last several fiscal years. We have a little over $1 in our savings account. And whether it be local governments or in fact some other state entities have, 3 months, 4 months worth of operating cash on hand in a savings account. The state of Ohio has none. And the president's right. If we have some revenues that are excess over expenses, we owe it to the taxpayers of the citizens of Ohio to replenish that so that we can show sound fiscal management, just like other folks do with their own personal finances.
If we could move on to some of the amendments that you guys are going to be proposing today. I noticed that you have a thing in here about prohibiting a state board of education from requiring the completion of a degree as a condition of a teacher's license. Does that mean that school kids might have teachers in their classroom that don't hold a college degree?
I'll let the chairman and I'll add to that.
Yeah, I think that was a proposal by, in specific, the career technical schools in the state, as I recall, because many times for their trades programs, a licensed plumber or licensed HVAC contractor with 20 years of experience is the perfect person to put in contact, and that was their recommendation, and we believe that was the right thing to do.
So is it only for career tech schools?
That was their proposal, but that's where the language came from.